Enhanced interrogation techniques, the new modern word for torture. Let's take a look at Operation Phoenix. Let's go.
Torchlit ceremonies marked the end of training at Vung Tau camp. From here, the special teams went to operate in the countryside. Their war was heartless. Close-knit family structures and the Vietnamese tradition of retribution made murder, torture, and vendetta commonplace. Beating prisoners and brutal torture were an everyday feature of the war.
That's an everyday feature of every war. Can you guys tell me one war where there's not these type of things? By definition, there's going to be horrible things done. So this guy is clueless.
The strength of family loyalties, the traditions of retribution, and the ruthlessness of the Vietnamese made this so. Gathering...
It's not the Vietnamese people. This guy's totally out of his mind here. It is called warfare. You've got most countries, to include the U.S., that have, I'm going to call it tribal problems, all right? Different sects, different religions, you name it, they're not going to agree. And that's where this stuff comes into play.
Intelligence was often incidental. Brutality and assassination were time-honored ways of exacting revenge. It was part of Vietnam. It was part of Phoenix.
I'm an ex-CI colonel with blood up to my armpits. Not personally, I never killed myself, but I managed wars that killed a lot of people.
It's always funny how people get a conscience after they're done. So when they can't get burned, all of a sudden they're holier now, right? Now he's worried about it. Now he's out of the CIA, got his fat pension, he's moving on.
This was one of them. For John Stockwell, as for many others, the system that generated torture was more powerful than any individual objections raised against it.
The CIA was tolerant of torture in Vietnam. It also participated in it on occasion in some of the interrogation centers as a matter of policy. Of course, as a matter of policy, it had to deny it. In my own experience, and when I moved to Tay Ninh, I found the police chief there was using our safe house to carve up prisoners who didn't have family protection. I reported it in a discreet memo to Tom Polgar, the chief of station.
All these guys are concerned about is success, right? Whether it's military success, political with respect to the CIA and getting their points across. Where is the line? That's my question. That's really the point of this video. Where's the line in warfare? Is torture too much? Is using a .50 caliber bullet on someone too much? Where's that fine line that we draw? Do we fight with boxing gloves and whoever the winner is, that's the winner? There's a real problem with people's virtue signaling in all of these shows after the fact.
And his response was to have me down for a cocktail party and quietly in the garden, a nice man, explained to me that he couldn't close the post down, it was too important. He couldn't get the man transferred because that would be interfering in Vietnamese affairs. So all he could think to do would be to transfer me, and he pointed out that that would seriously damage my career. So I went back to Tay Ninh and closed the safe house down, put out the word to my staff that I vigorously disapproved of torture, and so no one mentioned it to me again for my 2 years in the country.
I hate to be cynical, but he didn't want to get burned. Did he know about it? Did it continue? Well, of course it did, right? It's war. It happens on both sides of the aisle. I don't know what the expectation here is. That's what I want you guys to put in the comments. What do you do? Where is that line?
Suppressing it so that no one would talk to me about it, I could pretend I had stopped it or maybe curtailed it and proceeded to work with this monster for the next 2 years on a very intimate basis.
44 provincial interrogation centers, known as PICs, were designed and built by the CIA.
Trước lúc tôi bị bắt á, thì tôi là ủy viên tiểu ban giáo dục. At
the time of my arrest, I was a member of the Education Committee for the National Liberation Front in Long An. When they tortured me, the Americans stood on one side and talked to my torturers. They used electric shock. First they attached a peg to my ear, then my lower lip, then my tongue, then my nipples. They had a device like a telephone set which had a gauge on it with markings from 1 to 9. When they turned it from 1 to 8, we were still conscious, but...
I haven't yet seen the program recently, and put this in the comments if you have, about the Americans talking about the torture on the other side. Is any of it right? It's warfare. It's not play fair. It's not a party. I just don't know what the expectation here would be. You get this Geneva Convention concept, which means you can bomb and kill or shoot them, but if you catch them, you got to take care of them. That's where I get lost mentally. You guys help me out, explain that to me so I understand.
Felt pain. When they used 9, we became unconscious. Then they hit my hands until they were all swollen like bananas. You couldn't close your fingers. Then they used a pair of pincers to pull my nails out and in, one nail at a time. It was terrible.
I mean, the whole thing sounds terrible, and it's unsettling to listen to as I sit here in air conditioning, right? But I don't know what you do if you're a soldier over there and that gets information to help you, your cause. And what's your cause, right? Your cause is for you and your friends, your buddies, to make it back to the United States. That's your cause at that point. You don't care about the politics. You don't care how you get there because you've seen too many friends die. And so that's where the big problem is, the dichotomy in this whole thing is, what do you do?
It took 10 years for my nails to grow back. Still, I told them nothing.
None of the pics worked. We never got interrogation reports out of the pics. Others said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. They denied everything. In fact, I never found one who was ever identified as a Class A VC from a village. I never found one in any of the pics. I went into all of the pics, Military Region 3. Useless.
Do they truly think it's useless, or are they picking the wrong people, or is there a combination of both? I find it hard to believe it's totally useless. Now, do I think there's a certain point where people are going to fess up to anything? Of course, right? You're going to have a truth-lie sandwich, just enough truth so they can check it out, but enough of lies so it doesn't give anything away if you're good, right? But what do they do? Again, that's what's been eating at my mind as I watch this video.
Totally useless.
After my arrest, they put me in a helicopter and took me to the interrogation center. There were 2 Americans and 1 Vietnamese there. I was not a VC, I knew nothing. I was just a woman. They poured soapy water down my throat until I felt I was drowning. Then they poked me with a dagger, and they kicked me on both sides of the ribs. They beat me until I could have children no more. I hate the Americans.
Unfortunately, I would say that's an equal hatred on both sides. I'm sure there's plenty of vets that have a disdain for the Vietnamese. Understandably so, the Vietnamese have a disdain for Americans. Again, because it is warfare. It's not play fair. I don't know how many times I can say that. I don't know what the solution is beyond don't enter warfare. And if you do, realize it's going to be ugly. You're not going to like the things you see. The media is not going to like it. And they're going to like it just enough until it doesn't suit their needs anymore. Then they're going to throw every soldier under the bus, right? You've seen that.
Torture as an instrument of the Phoenix program, I'm sure it occurred, and I can tell you that the South Vietnamese were totally unforgiving of their adversaries, just as the communists were unforgiving of the South Vietnamese political operatives whom they captured. The agency knew about this, and the agency let the South Vietnamese government torture when it served a particular purpose. It's terrible to say, but there's no question that it happened. I saw the results of this policy of acquiescence.
Now, I could respect that man if he walked out the door at that time, right? So he saw it happening, he walked out and was a whistleblower. But I guarantee you that guy's probably getting a pension, he probably went through his time, or got out's writing a book about it. So everybody's so virtuous after the fact, and that's a hard thing for me to listen to sometimes in these kind of situations, because they forget about the war. They forget about the bodies stacked up, sent back to the United States. They forget about the guys injured. And I can speak to this having a family member that was injured You know, it's not easy. So there's two sides to this, and if you get the right answers, it maybe changes your opinion. What if it was your family member? How would you feel? Think about that. Put it in the comments. Don't, whatever.
CIA had never taught brutal in interrogation because
of course not.
It's counterproductive. I learned that in World War II. When the Nazis applied that kind of technique, all they got was either what they wanted to hear or the person died resisting them. And you're not going to get accurate information that way. Interrogation is a very subtle art of bringing along the person until he begins to tell you more and more, and then confronting him with contradictions in what he told you, with what you know from another source. And then you gradually break him down and you learn what the real case is. But that is, beating on the soles of the feet or something doesn't help you at all in that process.
I would agree with that. I think there's a method to the madness. I think it's like the good cop, bad cop scenario. You can't always just beat the guy, right? But you got to wear him down. It's like the pebble in the shoe. It's like some sort of military training. You beat him down slow enough so you get what you want, whether it be money, whether it be using leverage with family. You got to do something, though, because typically when you snatch somebody up, they got information you want. If you wanted them dead, they'd already be dead.
Con Son, Vietnam's Devil's Island.
Wow.
Built originally by the French and later enlarged with American help, this was Vietnam's most brutal and secure prison complex. It contained the notorious tiger cages. Cells measuring no more than 9 feet by 5, each held 3 prisoners in appalling conditions.
You know, I'd tell you, look at the West Virginia Penitentiary. It's closed down now, but it was closed in '95. The cells were about this size. It looked almost identical, and it was in service not long ago. So this is not far off from reality in some prisons. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying when you're in prison, it's not all you hoped it would be going to Club Fed.
Returning to the island for the first time since their captivity are 2 Vietnamese who were caught in the Phoenix program.
As I walk around this place today, I remember the cruelty and barbarity of the enemy. That was the intention of the Americans in order to win the war, to isolate the people from the Liberation Front, or more precisely, to isolate the people from the Communist Party. For the front was also the Communist Party.
You know, my solution to this is don't get involved in warfare unless you're serious about it. Because this stuff always comes up. You cannot tell me one war that this did not come up. It is human nature. Goes back centuries. And unfortunately, that's what we are, right?
I had done nothing wrong, so it was hard to imagine life could turn out to be like this. I could have accepted it if I were a Viet Cong cadre, but I was only an ordinary citizen, a truck driver. We often told each other that we had fallen into hell on earth. I can conclude that because of the Phoenix program, I, who had not been a Viet Cong cadre, turned into a man who actively participated in Viet Cong affairs.
And that's a very good point he just made. So you're a normal guy, you're a farmer, you're an accountant, and all of a sudden they torture you or do whatever. Well, that changes your whole tune. So you may be totally not one way or the other on the war. You get tortured, well, guess what? Just created a new enemy, right?
The enormous volume of information collected by the CIA and other branches of intelligence created a dependence upon statistics. Increasingly, unrealistic quotas were set for numbers to be captured and killed.
The agency was lying in one case, and all these murders were going on in another case. And as my ideological house of cards was crumbling, COLBY, as head of cords, came out to the province. And he sat there with his notebook saying, well, how many assassinations have we conducted? How many people have we arrested? How many firefights have we...
It's like Moneyball, but in war. You know the movie Moneyball? They're trying to put statistics to it because maybe they've got some numbers from World War II or something, right? Doesn't quite work like that, but I get the concept. The new computers are out. They think, well, if we've got 4% to do this, it's going to equal that. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work in human nature.
How much to this and that? And I looked at him and I said, hey, you dumb, blind son of a bitch. Why don't you open your eyes and see? Do you believe all these statistics that you're reading? Do you believe all of these things that you're saying? How can you not comprehend reality?
Robert Comer was sent back to Vietnam by President Nixon to assess the Phoenix program.
What had gone wrong was the execution wasn't proving very effective. Picked up all the wrong people. But we found that most of the VCI that were being identified were villagers who were at best the lowest level of the Viet Cong infrastructure. On the average, a very low quality. We got all the privates, but missed all the captains and colonels.
So I guess we can blame the CIA for being a bunch of dumbasses, right? That's what I'm hearing. So you say, here's what we're going to snatch. The high-level guys say it. They snatch them, trying to get info, but he's saying we didn't get the right people. I mean, where does the buck stop here? Who takes responsibility for this? Because what happens is you blame it on the underlings and the military, and that doesn't work. There's somebody responsible. These idiots are responsible, my take. What do you think about that? Put that in the comments.
This room, which is so barren now, was the CIA primary radio room. And a lot of CIA operatives carried little radios on their belt known as Diamond Net radios. That was sort of the code word for the system. And they left these radios strewn around Saigon, and Vietnamese who'd been left behind were grabbing up these radios and calling in. And I remember very vividly standing in this room with voices coming in over the radio circuits, Vietnamese calling for help. There's of Vietnamese screaming over this radio for help, and these walls literally seemed to reverberate with their cries of panic.
Well, I like his poetic explanation, but the bottom line is you go into somebody's country and you try to implement one side or the other, you're going to have 50% of the people that hate you. And those people that buddied up with you, when you leave, are going to be the odd man out, whether it's in Vietnam or in Afghanistan. This goes on and on and on back through history. What do you guys think the most prolific example of this was in history? Put that in the comments.
I saw it as the most heinous betrayal of our friends. The only thing you have to offer a source is loyalty and the assurance you will take care of them. And when you abandon a source, you'll never hire or recruit a new source. They'll never trust you. And so what we did in Vietnam those final days was to commit the one error that an intelligence officer must never make. We let people who work for us see that in a crunch, we wouldn't do anything to help them.
Well, I think that happens all over the world, right? It's about money. If you give them enough money, they will help. If they think you're going to leave them behind, but no one knows. They left these guys behind. Have they left others behind? Of course they have. It's going to be the luck of the draw. If you don't want to get involved in playing that high-stakes game by getting the money from the CIA, don't do it, right? If you want more videos about the Vietnam War or the CIA's operations, put that in the comments. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. For my subscribers, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching.